to get as much out of it and to spend as much time with Carol as we possibly can. So first and foremost, welcome everyone. My name is Marilyn Halprin. I'm the Director of Education at Chicago Shakespeare. We are so happy to have this gathering and so appreciative to all of you for spending yet one more hour in front of a screen. God help us all. But this is our life now, right? And I want to introduce a few of the people who are as much part of who CST education is as I am. And so let me just quickly introduce Maggie Suggett, who is our Learning Programs Manager. Jason Harrington, who is our Education Outreach Manager.
Hello. And
Sarah Thiel, who is our Public Humanities Manager.
Hi everyone, welcome.
And together, this is CST Education. Carol Jago is obviously in the room. I'm going to wait 1 minute to introduce her because she doesn't get off easy with just a job title. So I'm gonna wait a second to introduce her. A few things. Because there are a number of people in this call, we'd love to, if you're comfortable using the chat function at the bottom, to if you wouldn't mind going in, put your name, your school, where your school is, then we can at least say hi to one another in the chat room, and we would love to do that. We're also going to be using the polling function that Zoom has, and you can go in. It's a very short, I think, four question poll. Oh, no, I'm so wrong. It's a 7-question poll. I guess we just couldn't stop asking questions. But you can fill it out at any time. It will be quick. And it's not so much, it's not like an assessment of today. It's just kind of trying to get a sense of what people are up to now and what they would like from us in the future. And just as an FYI, you'll see that the recording button is on. Oh, look at, hey, everybody. We would love to be able to share this chat with other teachers. So that's the reason we're recording it. Plus, we think it's just going to be so cool. Because there are so many people in the room, if I could ask everyone just to kind of, and we all know so much more about Zoom than we ever wanted to, I know, at this point in COVID-19. Just keep your mute on, your mute button on until you're going to say something, and then unmute yourself if you would. All right, so here's what we have in store for today. We're going to spend some time with Carol Jago, who I will still introduce in just a minute. Carol's going to talk some about just the world we're living in and where teaching literature fits into that, if it fits in and how it fits in to your students' lives right now. There will be plenty of time for your questions and responses. That's really what the teacher talk is meant to be. And Carol's going to share an activity that she loves that you all will be able to use in your remote classrooms. And then to bring us all home at the end, well, we all are home, but assuming we weren't home, Jason is going to be bringing it home with a really cool, fun community building activity that he's thought through in terms of how it works on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever platform you all are using. All right, so Carol Jago. Yay. Carol is, and I'm guessing if we did a hand poll now, we'd see that probably almost everyone knows more about Carol than I'm going to say in this brief introduction, and there is so much to say. She is truly one of our country's leading experts in adolescent literacy. She was a mentor of mine as I was coming in to this field and learning about what adolescent literacy meant and what it involved and what we as a theater could do to support teachers of middle school and high school. She serves as the Associate Director of the California Reading and Literature Project at UCLA. And some of you are going to know Carol from her tenure as the president of NCTE. Her books are prolific, and I'm just going to mention 3 that have had a big impact on me, and I know a lot of other people in the field. The book in question, Why and How Reading is in Crisis, With Rigor for All, Meeting Standards for Reading Literature, and Classics in the Classroom, and more. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to someone who has been a huge influence in my life and therefore in our education department, Jago.
Thank you, thank you. And just in case you were wondering, I actually live in Chicago now, though, which explains my connection with Chicago Shakespeare, where it's gone. And I really think that this is a moment when all of us are asking ourselves, like, why teach literature? You know, at a time like this, why is literature important? Isn't that like the frosting on the cake instead of the cake itself? And I guess first and foremost, anything students are reading right now is a good thing. We're happy about that. But Stephen Greenblatt explains that literature is the most astonishing technological means humans have created to capture experience. And all pieces of writing are not equal. And so the extent to which you and I can continue to bring works that are really rich and powerful into students' lives, this can help them, I believe, survive, thrive, manage in this world. And so how do we make those decisions? Well, Harold Bloom, the literary scholar, maybe something, he says a lot of things has said a lot of things that make a lot of us mad, but he's also brilliant. And one of the things when he talks about making choices about what works to teach, to invest our time, the limited time we have online with our students. And he talks about 3 criteria. Aesthetic splendor. So the words themselves should be perfectly chosen for the message, for the task. The sound should be an echo to the sense. They should have cognitive power and teach students things. So works that take students to lands away, to teach them about history, nature. You know, how many times do we talk in education about background knowledge? I swear, everything I know about history, I learned from novels. I mean, I'm not saying this is the best way to learn history, but it deals with, as right now, our students' lives in many ways have grown so small as they're sheltering in place. Literature can be a way, you know, Emily Dickinson, she takes them to lands far, far away. And then the 3rd criteria is wisdom. That the kind of poems and passages that we are worthy of your online time with students really should help them better understand the human condition and what it means to be a human being in this time. Something that I think is very dangerous in the current discourse around what we're all experiencing in education right now has to do with a deficient model. And everybody's talking about the learning loss, I am not kidding. I heard today someone say that NWEA, those of you who know MAP, this is the organization that brings us the MAP test. They have announced that there will be 50 to 70% learning loss. What? I mean, against what criteria? I would like to suggest that students are learning a lot. They're learning about loneliness. They're learning about boredom. They're learning about friendship. There was an amazing article in yesterday's Washington Post by Nicole Mira and Tara Garcia about how students are getting a civics lesson in real time right now, watching how government responds. And, you know, there've been all the NAEP scores came out in US history and civics. And of course, it's all ring in your hands, kids today, blah, blah, blah. But students are learning. And I think that we need to really push back as individuals against this idea that kids are behind, which is not to say that students aren't missing some things. And I also want to be clear, I don't mean in math. I don't mean in science. If you're missing the unit on photosynthesis, you can't go on to study botany. I'm speaking about our field of language arts, where no one book, Marilyn, I'm sorry to say this, no one Shakespeare play has to be taught or viewed. It's different for us. So what we need to keep our eye on is the importance, the tremendous importance of keeping kids reading, keeping kids wanting to read. Now, I know that some of you have been pushing at this for these very issues for a very, very long time. But I think that we're also at a point where it really could be valuable for us to as teachers to think about, what are we learning? What are we learning from this time online with students that was just thrust upon us? It's like Yahoo, go out there and do it. And what are we learning that we are going to take back in the fall? You know, so many of the scenarios that we're hearing about what school will look like just sound like disasters waiting to happen. But let's be clear, school will resume. Parents have to go back to work. Schools are our childcare. They will reopen. And what can we learn for what's happening right now that can help us to be better teachers as we look forward? So I'd like to open this up to your thoughts. And let me just see where I am. Oh, and I'm on the wrong slide, but that's all right. You all screw up a little bit, maybe yourselves when you're okay. This is what I want to ask. What do you find that your students are learning in this online only environment? And how do you see teaching and learning being affected? You can just raise your hand and Maggie will help us navigate this conversation. What do you think? What are your students learning? Maybe that's unexpected. And how is it affecting your teaching itself?
If you want to raise your hands in the button at the bottom, we'll call on you.
I don't see it.
Oh,
I saw you raise your hand, Rebecca. You want to unmute yourself, though.
Okay. Yeah. My students, I range from grade 7 all the way up to 12 for students that I'm teaching. And I think all of them, one of the things I'm learning, that they're learning, is self-discipline and self-motivation. And for me, how that's affecting my teaching is that I have to have an incredible amount of flexibility.
Yeah.
Because as they're starting to navigate, what does this mean for me to do it on my own? I have to be there to support that and allow them to make mistakes and be flexible and learn from that as they take steps forward.
That's great. Tracy, you were going to say something. Unmute yourself. Hit unmute.
I got it. I just didn't know you were going to call on me. Woo. Okay. So I would say, as teachers, I mean, yes, they're also learning, besides trying to find self-discipline and trying to find motivation, which they're not all doing successfully right now. It's hard. I teach 7th and 8th graders. But in terms of what we're learning as teachers, I think we're also zoning in on like, what are the most essential skills, right? We are meeting, I teach in Winnetka, a lot of my colleagues are here, and we're doing half of our classes each day. We are not covering the same curriculum, and we really had to have some conversations like, what are the most essential skills we think these 7th and 8th graders need to learn? And I actually think that's actually sort of made us sort of look at things a little bit differently, you know, and when we really had to make some hard decisions.
And I think that this is going to help all of us, you know, because when people say students are behind, they're behind in a sense, only in the sense that they're maybe not what standards describe and standardized tests are measuring, but they're learning a lot. What else? What else are you seeing? Yes.
I
was
think,
just going to, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
okay, one thing I think that my students are learning is what's not working. And I think a lot of them realize now. I had one student who just told me this morning, I've been staying up till 5 a.m. on my phone and on YouTube and whatever. And he said, I know it's a hole that I'm in, and I've got to get out of it, but I don't know how. And I just can't seem to do it. So I think he's realizing he needs a schedule. He needs a place to go. Normally when they're in school, they have that sense of, this is where I learn, this room, this place. And then when they're home in their bedrooms, that is not the place. That's not. And so that adjustment. So I think they're learning too, just from sheer lack of what they need.
And I think that learning is going to be really valuable in the years ahead, because what all publisher instructional materials, they're seeing this as an acceleration of online learning. Mm-hmm. And so that learning online is almost going to be the default, and or paper. I mean, as I said, we are going back to school face to face. I have no doubt about it. If it might not happen in September, but it's going to happen. But even then, we might be able to do more as school districts invest more in online, in devices. Right now, 12 million children nationwide don't have internet access. That will be fixed, I believe, or their only access is through their parents' phone, and the parents are at work with their phone. So I think that we're going to figure that out. Marcia, you were going to say something.
I was going to say that I teach 8th graders, and our theme for the year is coming of age. So one of the first things that we did was talk about how this could be a real coming of age experience for them, that they could decide as 8th graders, you know, they can coast these last few weeks of the school year. This was back in March, and because they've already been placed for next year, or they could also decide that this is going to be their chance to learn how to learn, because they can't depend on the lecture, because we're being allotted a half hour of instructional time per class. I teach a block, so I get an hour a week, so I get a bonus. But you know, my style of teaching is very Socratic, so there's a lot of back and forth, and they're not going to be able to get that with 30 kids on a call. So I really talk to them a lot about this idea of, let this be your time, and as you are 8th graders going into high school, this need for independence and problem solving and figuring things out on your own becomes even greater. And I was just talking to my principal about it last night. I think that's something that we've learned, is how much we have taken that ability of problem solving away, that we've almost taken scaffolding way too far.
I totally agree. And also think about how many years we've been talking about metacognition. And that really describes, is what you've just described.
Right.
Asking students to look at what, instead of saying, Miss, why did I get a B-? Like putting it back to students, we're not going to go there about grading in these conditions. That's a whole nother world, and there are no good answers there. But in terms of students actually having understanding for themselves the quality of the work they're turning in, the value of it for it, and where it still needs to go. Other comments or questions about this issue of what we're learning as teachers?
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Because in addition to the kids that I teach who are 8th graders as in a pre-AP class, I also teach an intervention class. And there are only 17 kids in that class. And the highest level of reading is maybe 5th grade. And consistently, I've had no more than 6 on a call since we've gone remote. So I guess one of the things I'm very concerned about is how much bigger this gap that already is there is getting. And if anybody has had any success with intervention level or special ed or other, the struggling readers and the struggling writers and all of that. Because today I had my call, I had one person on it.
Yeah, and I can, Tracy, I want you to tell us what you're thinking. I also will say that every publisher, anybody who works in creating materials is making this their first priority, to figure out how we can help accelerate the growth of students who started out behind and now are even more so. Tracy, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, and it's probably just the nature of the kids we work with. So I'm a special ed teacher and I have resource classes, and there are 7 kids in each class. And since the first couple of weeks, I've had 100% attendance, but I teach in Winnetka. There's a lot of support at home, but I did have a few kids who I think, they were thinking, oh, maybe I don't have to show up to resource. And I was persistent, and I actually emailed their parents and the children, like, is everything okay? I really knew they were just trying to duck out of it, but I used that strategy. Oh my gosh, is everything okay? What can I do to help? And they all show up now. But that could be where I teach and the nature of these kids.
And here's another scenario that I was reading this morning about Montana opening up. So in places where there hasn't been a lot of cases, and the first kids they're going to bring back are the special ed students, and face to face in very small numbers. And that made a lot of sense to me, that those are the students who most need hands-on with their teachers. I think
I'm sorry, I'm also a special education teacher, but I work with high functioning kids with severe emotional and social difficulties, and we're having a really hard time getting engagement. And one of the things that I think is really hard, when I hear and look at where everybody's from is, you talked about the technology piece. The resources are incredibly different based on where you are and what school you teach at. The parental support is incredibly different from child to child. And with kids who have social emotional problems, a computer and being on a camera is incredibly difficult. And so, it's been really hard to engage them. We've tried multiple different ways, and some kids it works one way and some kids another way. But I also think that a lot of times kids who are lower reading level at the high school level they know that and they feel that. And so I've also tried to increase the amount of choice I give them on what they're reading, and try to hook them in on something that they might want to read on their own, as opposed to when you can't really do a full class discussion on a book, can they talk to me about a book they're reading one-on-one?
Yeah, and I see in the chat room that Gabby is talking about, she's 2 or 3 students per Google Meets that, and not, this is with, in California, 32 kids in a class is normal. We can't feel guilty about this, and all we can do is think about what are the implications? What are the implications for those students? What are the implications for next year? I don't mean to scare people, but think about how hard this has been with kids that you've already you've already had a relationship since September with these students. What if happens in the fall when we start with students we don't know? And how do you create community? I saw your face, Rebecca. I don't know. I think that this is really going to be a huge challenge. One of the best thinkers that I have come across in a long time is Marianne Wolf, who's a neuroscientist, and she has this book, reflecting on what you were saying, Michelle, about giving students choice. That we right now have people wringing their hands. Kids today, they won't read, they can't read, and because they're all, and the blame has been on their screens, on their phones, all they want to do is play Fortnite. That she talks about a need for students developing a biliterate reading brain. So rather than either or, is it paper, is it screens, if there's one thing that we've seen so clearly right now, is we can't ignore the differences between books and screen. We need, going back to what Marcia was saying about metacognition and helping students just better understand themselves, how, when they need paper, when a screen is all they have. And so I want to share with you a lesson, an idea that can, I think, help students think about what was and what is right now. Again, let me, okay. And Umberto Eco talks about how every text is a lazy machine asking the reader to do some of its work. And so many of our struggling students think when the going gets tough, that either there's something wrong with them or there's something wrong with the book. There's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with the book. It's that you don't know what to do to get this text moving. And so I'm going to share with you a poem, but we need to warm students up to that reading. And so just ask them to make 2 lists. One of all the things they used to do in school, on the playing fields, with their friends, after school. And then another list of the things that they do now. By the way, we're going to send you a link to where this lesson is written up, so you don't need to take notes or anything. I often tell kids that they have to put 10 things on the list. There's nothing special about 10 things. It's just to make sure they have enough to work, enough ideas to work with. And then I share with them this poem by Quincy Troop. He's given us permission to share this. Flying Kites. We used to fly rainbow kites across skull caps of ours, holes on blue wings of the canvas of sinking suns, running winged eyes locked to wind. We'd unwind the kite string up and away, and then run them down blue tapestry, up the sky again, then down, until the sinking sun rolled down into a swallowing sky. Today, we fly words as kites, across pages of winds, through skies as poems. We shape from holy, bloody, adjectives in nouns. We loop into sound circles, ringing like eclipse, the sun's tongue. And what I ask students to do is to use Quincy Troop's poem as a mentor text and have them to take some of their ideas. They don't need to use all of the ideas from their list, but to write about what they used to do in one stanza and then what they do today. And I have a couple poems that were written last week that I just would like to share with you. I have them here. Okay. These are from teenagers. We used to kill time with dumb conversations. The songs in our heads is the only escape. We laughed at the threat of viral annihilation. Only fear on our minds was, oh God, I'm late. Sleeping in class because we stayed up all night, wishing for a little bit of change. Now, time's killing us. As day and night blends, the songs fill the silence, even though we hit pause. Sleep has lost meaning when you're never awake. In the comfort of our homes, but we never felt so lost. We just want this nightmare to end. And it's not as though students have spent a lot of time with these poems. It's coming right from their experience. One more here. That was by John Kenny. Gives the poets there. This one's by Christian Benetti. We used to go to the movie theater, catching the new release. The scent of popcorn filled our nose, the unsanitary leather seats, the screen lighting our faces. It was the perfect scene for a Friday night. Now we view films at home, resting in bed like a bum. Concession stand is now a fridge. Packed theater became a lonesome room. We try to keep that cinema feel, but movie theaters are gone. And I think in both, what I really liked about these two poems is one talks about several different things, and the other just focused on the movie theater as kind of a stand-in for so many others. Then I have one more poem that I wanted to share with you. And my sister is on this call. She is the inspiration for this poem because, okay. This is by 8-year-old William Trotter. He wrote, "Now and then, we used to go swimming, play outside, go out to eat, use each other's stuff, go to summer camp, go to soccer games, go to school, and go to the park. Today, we have homeschool. We go on walks, stay away from people, eat at home, go on bike rides, and then this is what I love, and be an author," by William Trotter. I think that when we invite students to share their experience without prying, it's always such a delicate dance we do as teachers, because as Michelle talked about, students are reluctant to show their faces online sometimes, and also to open up the whole environment they're living in, let alone talk about deep things about themselves. But this lesson invites reflection, questions, comments, your thoughts about this. What do you find in your students in terms of their writing? What do you notice? Yeah, Heidi, unmute yourself. There
Okay,
you go.
well, I'm finding, I teach high school in California, and I'm finding that that the students are choosing to, we have in California that they basically can't go down from their third quarter grades. So everything they do can just help them. So for the kids that are doing well, there are a lot of them have not been that motivated to work. But one thing that has motivated students is like when I give them personal writing assignments. So sometimes I've given them like the regular like homework assignment, but then I'll put something on like questions like I got from like a flyer I had from a financial like advisor, and it was questions about to generate like discussion questions with your family, because so many families now are meeting on Zoom and stuff. So it was like, what's your best memory? What was your favorite age you lived in, and what you lived or whatever? What's something you'll never forget? Like, where's a place you'd like to go? And the kids eat those up. They love to write about themselves. And then I did a poetry project, and not all the kids did it, but the ones that, and I had not even introduced poetry barely at all this year. It was supposed to be a fourth quarter thing, and then leaving Romeo and Juliet. And so so when we did that, a lot of them were pouring out really like heartfelt stories, like, and it gave them kind of like that escape that poetry sometimes like can do, whatever. But I've noticed the students really like the kind of the easier, shorter like assignments, and they love to write about themselves. So I'm putting more of those on, and we're starting Romeo and Juliet. That's why I love you guys and this whole Shakespeare. I'm coming to Chicago sometime, and I'm going to meet you guys. But but I really loved the we did yesterday the activity. I had 10 kids come on to, we use WebEx, and we did the Snap Shakespeare activity, Romeo and Juliet activity, and it was a blast. But I'm finding like that, that to get them to write about themselves. So the first set of assignments I gave them for Romeo and Juliet was to answer questions like, what's the hardest thing about being a teenager? Can teenagers really fall in love? Like the same kind of questions I've usually used, but they seem to like those. And I checked like a few hours ago because it was due at 3, and a lot of them had done it. So I'm like, oh, good, success. So that's what I have found over the last like 6 weeks. That's how I finally figured out that they love to write about themselves. So that was.
But two things there. One is, have you tapped into the Chicago Shakespeare website about where the Romeo and Juliet? Yeah. Oh, great. Because
that's how I got into this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. The other thing that I think, talking about taking what we're learning here. So many of us moved away from personal writing, you know, because it's where those of us who are writing project people, where we began, and then we got beaten up a little bit about, well, kids need to be writing more argumentative writing, more informational writing, and maybe we're coming full circle now, which is to say, not to abandon the argumentative writing, the rhetoric, understanding rhetoric and the rest, but to bring what we learned about good argumentative writing, good informational writing, and to bring the personal into that. Because ultimately, if without the personal connection, it's just an artificial thing kids do for school. And that's what isn't happening, I believe, in a lot of in just a whole lot of our classes. Kids who already weren't particularly engaged really are saying, I'm done. This has nothing to do with me, and nobody knows, and there are no repercussions. And we don't want there to be repercussions. We want to help them, but it just, again, maybe can help bring the humanity to what it is that we really want to do here. Questions, comments, and whatever you're thinking. We want to make this a conversation.
I have a comment.
Michelle.
Yes. So I'm a special educator as well, high school. I teach primarily English. And as you were talking, we were just talking about poetry. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, I had the students write 2 poems. And it was kind of a contrasting type of poem, but because they struggle with writing, I had them do acrostic poems because it provides, some structure. So for some of the special ed teachers, maybe provide some kind of acrostic situation for the students. So it might be a little easier. But I had them, the phrase was shelter in place and what it means for each of them. What does it mean? What is
beautiful?
And then the next phrase was, I'm a survivor. And then, of course, I had them, do their acrostic work, and then compare those two, like even though you're really struggling in shelter in places, a lot of it was kind of negative, of course, but then the I'm a survivor really kind of opened their eyes to, but I can do this, but I am doing this. And it was a little encouraging, I think. What I really learned is that these high schoolers are missing the human connection. That's what they most miss. And I think it's surprising them because they are a generation of just having friends on Facebook, and they have overlooked that they need human connection. And that's what I learned through the poetry assignments. But I do like your idea, kind of this then and now poetry that you just described. I think that now that my students have done the acrostic, and with that guidance of those phrases, they might now be equipped to kind of take it another step and do like the then and now poetry.
Well, I think your idea of an acrostic based on a phrase, a compelling phrase, I think that's brilliant. I mean, most acrostic poems are stupid because it's an alphabet poem or something, but that suddenly imbues it with real significance, with meaning. you just changed my whole idea about what about what an acrostic can mean. Who else? Gail.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question. Hi, everybody. This is really exciting. For Heidi, I'm not familiar with WebEx or the activities that she was mentioning. And I work with a teacher that they just started to get ready for, for the children to benefit from Shakespeare's opening up that play to all of us to see for the next month or so. They just started Romeo and Juliet this week. So I'm not, what is the WebEx? I don't know what that is.
WebEx is just our form of Zoom. Like our district uses WebEx to meet. Most of the students don't show their faces, so I'm kind of happy looking at all your faces because most of the time I just see their initials. But the Chicago Shakespeare company has put out, that's how I found out about this talk. They opened up everything and they had different activities. And so the one I did yesterday was it was called SnapLink, or It's a Snap, and where you there's a script, and what I did was like put on a slideshow, and then I had all 3 slides up on the screen at the same time, and I shared my screen like Carol did with us a few minutes ago, and it had one screen on the slide was the lines that they had, and the other 2 was the script the teacher reads, and it was like a synopsis of Romeo and Juliet, and then the kids shouted out their lines, and of course I didn't see their faces because they won't show them, so I just heard random voices, but it was like really exciting. I was going to say something else too, like because some people were saying ways to, especially to help the kids that are struggling, that I have Screencastify, and it's a way to make videos, instructional videos of videotaping what you do on the computer. It's my favorite app now. It's my favorite thing. I keep making them, but there's some kids that have had questions and I'm like, okay, wait a second, wait 10 minutes, I'll be back. And then I go and I explain the assignment and then I post it, and then it really helped the kids. So and that was a special ed student. So some of the kids, it's really nice. I think that's something I'll carry into next year. Like if a kid misses class, I'm like, you know what? It's on, I made a Screencastify on it. Go look at Google Classroom and it's there. So that's been really helpful. But that was, WebEx is basically our Zoom.
And if in the chat room, thank you, Maggie, there's the link to the Chicago Shakespeare resources. And also Christina just posted that Screencastify opened up their time limits for all educators right now. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is like, not all of us are great on screen with videos. Like, wouldn't it be great to collaborate a little bit so that if you did a really good lesson on teaching metaphor and I could use that? And anyway, I think that right now one of the teachers feel as though they're in a blender. Their personal and professional lives are just, they've got kids their own children running around the house, and we are probably trying to do too much, and we need to take care of ourselves as well. And maybe literature is one piece of that too. I hope all of you know that Colson Whitehead's book, The Nickel Boys, just won the Pulitzer Prize.
Oh.
A brilliant, it's the second time he's won the Pulitzer. He won it for The Underground Railroad. This book is even better as a teacher because it's short. And anybody who teaches middle and high school knows length matters. And I just think it belongs in any American literature curriculum. It's a story about boys in a reformatory quasi-prison who were abused, terrorized. This is a real story, even though it's fiction. So the Colson Whitehead has written a novel, but kids can do that research, go out online, discover what really happened. And I think that our online lives as teachers are really going to expand and grow. So with that, I just want to end with the idea that, reading and writing aren't just, they're more than gateways to academic success. They really are tools for life. And I just want to thank all of you for all you do every day to give students those tools. Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you for an activity for us.
Carol, thank you so much. Thank you for listening as only you can.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carol. All right, well, I feel I was excited to share this before this conversation, but I'm more so now with the focus on connection and community building, because that's what we hope this could be. You might use it as a physical energizer. It might be the way you start a Zoom meeting with students, or it might be a midpoint. But here's what it is, and I'm going to ask you to play along. For those of you who are meeting us for the first time, I'm going to ask for your trust. This will be low stakes. You'll be taken care of. For those of all the faces that are familiar to me, I need you to do this with me. Here we go. So stand on up and position your camera if it needs to be readjusted, so we kind of get a mid shot, like from your head to your waist. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you'll need a little space to exit camera to your left or to your right. And that's all you really need. Okay, 2 parts to this. It's called Shakespeare Says. And the first part is I'm going to teach you a number of prompts. I'll say a Shakespeare line, and I'll teach you a physical gesture that goes along with it. So when you hear the line, you'll do that gesture. That's the first part. Then the second part, once we learn them all, we'll play around with them by mixing them up in kind of a Simon Says, kind of a Shakespeare Says way. Okay, here we go. So perhaps the most famous stage direction in Shakespeare from Winter's Tale, when you hear exit pursued by a bear, this is what you're going to do. You're going to see the bear, and then you're going to run off camera. Okay, here we go. Exit pursued by a bear. Oh, you guys are so good. Oh my God. Okay, awesome. I got to give you a pro tip. Like, when we do this for real after the teaching, you should be on gallery view so you can see everybody else, because it's a gift. Okay, when you hear out damn spot, you're going to pretend there's a spot of blood on your camera, and you're going to wash it off. Out damn spot. Okay, awesome. When you hear I am translated, we're all going to be Nick Bottom when he transforms into the donkey. Here's what you'll do. Okay, stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. Okay, here we go. I am translated. Oh my God, you guys are so good. Okay. When you hear you kiss by the book, you're going to blow a kiss at the camera. You kiss by the book. Okay, and the last one for now will be blow winds from the tempest, and you'll be in a big windstorm that spins you around. Blow winds. Okay, those are our prompts. And now we're going to play around with them. This is your speaker view moment. I'm telling you, it'll be worth it. Okay, here we go. You kiss by the book. Exit pursued by a bear. Out damn spot. I am translated. Blow winds. Blow winds. Out damn spot. Exit pursued by a bear. I am translated. Okay, and so on and so forth. Don't sit all the way down yet. We were wondering, not to put anybody on the spot, but if someone had a really active phrase or line from Shakespeare that we could add to our list. Go ahead and put it in the chat if you have one. Christina, the night was unruly. I like it. Christina, show us you give us a gesture that we might do with that line. Where are you? Where are you?
And Christina, if you want to unmute yourself, you'll come up to the front of the group for everyone.
Hi, I don't even know what I would do. I just love that line.
Somebody, that's okay. Let's piggyback on that. Somebody else think of a gesture that we could do with that line. I'm trying to find, the night was unruly. Who's got one? Sherry Steelman, is that you? You have one? Sherry, unmute yourself. I see you waving around.
Hang on a second. Okay, I just covered my eyes and then went like that. For the night was unruly.
Is unruly. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's add one more prompt. So let's practice this one. The night is unruly. Good. And you guys have dumped a ton in here. Cynthia, do you have a gesture for "to thy own self be true"?
I don't know, maybe you could just stand erect and look forward to the future. I don't know,
Cool.
or something else.
I like it. Let's try it. Let's try it. To thy own self be true. Cool, 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 cool. So, and truly, I mean, we have a couple of minutes. If there's any unpacking to be done, we sort of, like, as a starting off place, we sort of wondered if students really latched onto this, if it could keep growing, if it was something that you extended throughout a text or even across texts. So at the end of a term, you might have gestures and prompts from a number of different readings that you've done as a possible way that you could expand upon this or use it in your class. And like, our department is not working with students directly in any way, the way that you all are. We wonder if things like this can help those students who don't want to turn on their camera, or can help those students who don't want to log in and don't want to engage in this kind of a weird format.
I've been in a lot of Zooms. Oh my gosh, I'm sure we all have. And not once have I ever been in a Zoom where kids got up like that and did something with hand motions or moved around, like really pursued by a bear. That's hilarious. You know, I can see so much value in getting kids up and doing things, even though they're sitting in front of their computers or their phones or whatever. So I love the idea.
So in college, I'm currently taking a gym course over Zoom, which is a bit of a challenge as a part of my requirement. And so no one has showed their face the entire time until my professor was just like, what's your favorite exercise to do? What are your favorite stretches to do? And everyone jumped on. And it was the first time I had seen everyone's faces. So something I've done in classrooms before are actually Shakespeare stretches. So they come up with different ways for, you know, those kind of things. And they're really good also at the beginning of a class to kind of get everyone moving and ready to go, or like halfway in between if everyone's kind of slow and not moving very well, it kind of helps wake their bodies up a little bit.
Thanks, Catherine. Nice to see you.
Just in terms of what we all know about Shakespeare too, that there aren't a lot of stage directions, but the directions are in the lines. And so it's accomplishing a really deep pedagogical understanding about reading Shakespeare and how actors discover what to do with their bodies, that it's there in the text.
I just had a brainstorm. Can I share it? it's not that brilliant. But so if you're not doing Shakespeare, but you're doing some piece of literature, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the signposts. And I was just thinking you could have the kids like again and again moments, right? So like a term that happens again and again, right? Like in Of Mice and Men, you know, I don't like this place. I don't like this place. You could come up with a gesture, and then anytime that comes up, they could all do that. So you could apply it, I think, in different ways. Just thought about.
Cool.
That could be cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, well played, Marcia. Good comment.
Hey, Jason, did we want to do a screenshot?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if you all are game, we thought it would be fun to have a little archive of our meeting, and if you chose of our 7 gestures, if ever to take a screenshot as sort of a reflection of this activity. If you're not into that, you can just turn your camera off for a second. Yeah. All right. On the count of 3, shall we? You'll just hit your, of the 7 that we just did, you'll just hit your favorite. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, you guys are the best. Thank you for playing. Thank you.
Jason, thank you. Yay. Yay. To all of you, Carol, first and foremost, what a joy. We hoped that this would bring light into our lives that can be a little bit dark at times right now, and you did exactly that. All of you just, it amazes and stuns us at CST what you all are doing and how much bravery it takes to be a first-year teacher all over again, and to figure it all out, and now to be thinking, oh my God, it's not even going to end in a couple weeks. It may be with us next year. I mean, so the light at the end of the tunnel has suddenly gotten a little tinier, but you all are figuring things out, and you're also helping us. So this kind of gathering is so enormously empowering, and thank you for taking this time to be with us. There's the poll. We would love to hear from you all about just sort of, are there other ways that we can be helpful, whether it is as this school year draws to an end, or we're moving into summer, or next year. We'll be emailing tomorrow with Carol's lesson plan and PowerPoint, so that's all good. And I want to be mindful of people's time. Thank you for, we saved the chat. If there was anything in there that you wanted us to respond to directly, we'll do that tomorrow. And just thank you all so much. Are there any last final thoughts, comments from anyone, or do we just say good night and just like a huge round of applause for everyone for what you are doing for all of us? Thank you, guys. And Carol, thank you. And maybe we'll see you again in a teacher talk. Bye.